But everyone has a different story to tell. Shell, which says it's losing the
Tampa market. Spiraling rise.
In Northeast Africa, precisely on the Horn of Africa.
I muted myself. Okay. Good morning to you all. So this morning again, I'm glad to be back with everything going on, but we are still here. So as you come and share the live, hit the like button. So today's topic is called Europe, the US, and the rest of the others. None of them have solution for African people. Whether the African continent or any African nations, none of them have. Sorry, folks, let me answer my mother quick. She's called. All right, folks, sorry about that. That was my mom calling me. All right, so the US, the UK, the rest, they have no solution for Africa, for African people, for African province, for African nation. Okay. In addition to that, we're going to look at Linda Thomas Greenfield. So we're going to look at her coming off visit or her coming off trip to Africa. All right. And the reason why she's going there. And so people like that, Garvey, warned us very seriously about people like Linda Thomas Greenfield. And we're also going to look at the U.S. Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, visit to Africa and the hypocrisy within her meshes. So we're going to look at their visits to Africa, okay? Their visit to African nation, why their visit. And then we're going to come out. So then the question becomes, if they do not have solution for Africa or for African people, then who have the solution for Africa? All right. So before we can get to it, I want to welcome you all again as you come and share the live. And then we want to say thank to all those who usually make it possible to come here to watch us and to be part of this platform. And to those of our contributor, our patron, we just want to say thank you. WCC do appreciate you in everything that you do to support us. So let's get into it. All right. So the first thing we're going to look at here, we are still celebrating Dr. King, right? So for we revolutionary or we African, we do not celebrate those who came after us, those who struggle on our behalf. We celebrate them every day. We don't celebrate them based on what the oppressor or the colonialist tell us to do, okay? We celebrate them every day. So we are still celebrating Dr. King, all right? So we're going to start with a message from Dr. King, all right? So we're going to start from America here, and then we go to the African continent. And the reason why we're starting from here is a reason why I want us to start from here, okay? Because we're going to look at Janet Yellen, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, her visit to Africa. That's why we're going to start from here. And then the reason why we're starting from here as well, we're going to look at the so-called Lena Thomas Greenfield, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, to Africa. So she have a trip coming up. So there's a reason why we're starting from here and then going back to the African continent. So if America do not have solution for the African people in America here, how can America have solution for the African continent? Just a few handful of people, okay? A few handful of people in America here, America do not have solution for them. Then how can America have solution for an entire continent? Okay? Few handful of population of Africa in America here, America don't have solution for them. How can America have solution for 1 billion of people on a continent? If UK or if the EU does not have solution for a few handful of African in Europe, all right, how can EU have solution for the African continent? They can. If they never show love to the African in America, to the African in Europe, how can they come out to show love to the African continent? If you do not show peace to the African in America, how can you show peace to the African in Africa? Because if you leave from here and you go to Africa, you're going to see the same black people. Okay? And if you leave from Africa and you come to America, you're going to see the same black people. So are they different? They're not different. Black is black. Let's get into it. My internet don't do this. My internet is messing up. It's on though, boys. I don't know what's okay. All right. We got it, folks. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at here, we're going to look at Dr. King's speech, the dream speech, because last week we said something about the dream speech, right? Because this is a speech they always bring to us to make us feel that America cares so much for African in America, all right? They make us feel that African problem in America have been solved. They make us feel that Dr. King messages, vision, dreams have come to reality. All right? But here is the same man that is about to tell us his dream did not come to reality. And in fact, he regretted why he even went on to say, to give that speech. All right, so we're not going to play the whole thing. I'm going to maybe play about 2 minutes or 1 minute, something like that. All right, but I just want to hear from him. So we're going to start from here and then go to the African.
I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
I must confess that that dream that I had that day has at many points turned into a nightmare. Now, I'm not one to lose hope. I keep on hoping. I still have faith in the future. But I've had to analyze many things over the last few years, and I would say over the last few months. I've gone through a lot of soul searching and agonizing moments. And I've come to see that we have many more difficult days ahead, and some of the old optimism was a little keep on hoping. I still have faith in the future. Yes,
color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
I must confess that that dream that I had that day has at many points turned into a nightmare. Now, I'm not one to lose hope. I keep on hoping. I still have faith in the future. But I've had to analyze many things over the last few years, and I would say over the last few months. I've gone through a lot of soul searching and agonizing moments. And I've come to see that we have many more difficult days ahead, and some of the old optimism was a little superficial, and now it must be tempered with a solid realism. And I think the realistic fact is that we still have a long, long way to go.
All right, folks. There is something that I want to connect before we go on. Last week, I brought out a quote from Dr. King where he said, freedom, I'm just going to paraphrase it, freedom can never be gained voluntarily by appealing to the oppressor. And he said, in order to gain your freedom, it have to be demanded by the oppressed, right? Now, in today's video again from Dr. King, you heard from him, okay? You heard from him about his dream speech. He regretted why he had to come out with that dream speech. That dream speech was not fruitful. And in fact, the moment he realized that that dream speech was not working, what happened? When he decided that we the oppressed, we have to demand for our freedom, we have to go on a socialist path, what happened? They kill him. All right? They kill him. America does not have solution for African problem. None of those enslaver or colonizer have solution for African problem. Now, I want you to pay attention to the videos. I'm going to play 3 videos. I want you to pay attention before we can get into what we are about to discuss today. All right? So just pay attention to those videos. I'm going to be making references to Dr. King, the second video we're about to watch, and the third video we're going to watch. Follow me. My internet is acting slow. All right. I think that was a video I took though. All right, folks, bear with me. Let me go back to my email. I lost the video, so I think I took it out from the screen. So let me go back to my email and try to pull it out. Bear with me. My internet is, it wasn't acting like this. All right, so let's see here. No answer solution. Okay. All right, folks. Sorry, I have to go to my email to pull it out. So now I have it. So I made a mistake and took it out from the screen.
One single platform. Go to Wix.com and get a robust booking solution that takes your business further. Set up your services like classes, courses, or
Northwest. Every African country that will hear these words of mine, create a country trust, a country trust, South African country trust, a Zimbabwean country trust, Malawian country trust, where the resources of the country can be taxed directly into this country trust at the end of every year or quarter. Let every citizen receive the benefits of being a citizen in those countries. Later on, we can look at how to put all these trusts together and come up with our African bond as of an African trust where we can benefit from the resources that we are having as a country. So this whole issue of foreign investments is a lie. We need African investments. Are we not ashamed? South Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Swaziland, Botswana, Lesotho, buying oil from Dubai, from Iraq, thousands of kilometers away from here. When Angola is here, 1,000-2,000 kilometers from your house, right here. It must be a shame that our governments, they shake hands and take pictures at United Nations, but immediately they turn their backs away from each other. They hate each other because of the quality of information the colonialists have told them. You president, don't trust this one. You president, don't trust this one. Hey, Thabo Mbeki, watch over Mugabe. Hey, Mandela, watch over this. You Kaunda, watch over Samora Machel, watch over this one. And these presidents are just walking up there, greeting each other like they like each other, when in actual fact they are being put in there as stooges of watching and observing each other. In some certain countries, even setting up military bases in surrounding countries so that they can manage the other countries that seem to be getting independent. We can see the agenda. We can see the agenda. And after that, you put visa requirements that we can come to your country. It's understood. We understand who is running the agenda. So yes, mining directly was involved. Highest producers. For crying out loud, South Africa, you can't even dig gold now. The gold in South Africa is now 15 kilometers. I was there, 15 kilometers under the ground, becoming impractical to mine it. In Zimbabwe, we're just starting on open cast. Where Johannesburg was in the early 1900s on the gold rush, where Kimberley was in the 1800s on the diamond rush, that's where Zimbabwe is right now. The trajectory goes the way it is going. By the time we are 500 meters to 1 kilometer down, digging our minerals, we would have been able also to build our own cities, just like Sandton and in Johannesburg. But progress must be given its own way, its own processes, not running on propaganda. So until we change our investment strategies as countries, right now there is load shedding. Yeah, load shedding. But did you know that Kabora Bassa Dam, if the surrounding countries, Malawi, Zambia, Mozambique, Botswana, Lesotho, Swaziland, can put their money in Kabora Bassa Dam this quarter, we have enough electricity for the entire region. Congo River has enough water to generate power throughout northwest central Africa. But we would rather be allowing foreign countries to come in, sponsoring wars, destabilizing us. The war in Mozambique is intended so that surrounding countries cannot trust putting their investments in Mozambique and in Malawi because it's politically unstable. But the political instability makes sure that you cannot invest economically.
All right, so pay attention to the videos. Okay, so the last point he made was the war. I'm just going to summarize it. The war in Africa are actually meant to keep Africa or African nations the way it is, so that the colonizer can continue to exploit the African continent. So that means those wars that you see in Africa are actually wars that are planned, okay, and supported by the colonizer. Those are proxy wars by the US, Europe, and their allies, okay, on the African continent. And we're going to see these things in articles that we are about to read here. That's why I said pay attention to these videos. All right. So when you see a war in an African nation and they blaming, okay, you see CNN, BBC, NBC, all of them come out to blame African leader or the African that, oh, they don't want peace. African just like war. It's because of they are the one supporting those wars. They are the ones supplying ammunition, just how they're doing it in Haiti. And then at the end, they come out to say the Haitian people does not need peace. They don't know how to rule. So UN or US have to go in with their military or with their forces to go, how they call it, lead the Haitian people. Now you see it, right? Wherever there is war, okay, those wars are not being created by mostly by African themselves, okay? It is a war perpetrated by European, okay, but America or Washington, D.C. support, okay, to destabilize those areas. So pay attention to these videos that I'm showing, and we're going to see an article, okay? Now, the next video, I'm going to allow the next video to actually play until it finishes, because there are solutions, there are problems and solutions within our video that African people need to rely on. So let's get to the next video.
I look at Africa and I look at when I look at Africa and I look at her in the continent, in the context of how attractive she is, another word comes to my mind called globalization. When we talk about globalization, you talk about globalization as if it were a new word. It is not. Africans were once globalized as a commodity in the slave market. We were sold everywhere in the world. That was globalization. That was globalization. Then we were globalized again through colonization. Then we were globalized again through neo-colonization. Now we are being globalized in the context of opening our markets. It is Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere who, in one of his many enlightened moments, said, when I hear the Europeans saying that we should open our markets in the name of globalization, and they say that the rules are the same, I laugh, Mwalimu said.
Sorry, folks. Let me make a point here quick before we move on. So if you check at the bottom of this video, it says, while globalization and colonization is one and the same. So globalization and colonization, they are one and they are the same. All right. So pay attention. We're going to see that in the video today. So globalization and colonization, they are the same.
And he said, it is like a boxing match. The rules are the same. But you don't put a heavyweight boxer and a lightweight boxer and say the rules are the same. It is murder. Allow me to be melodramatic. You imagine the United States of America with a GDP of anything between 14 trillion and 15 trillion is now entering into a bilateral arrangement with Lesotho, whose GDP is 2 billion. And you say the rules are the same. It is a joke. It is murder, because the revenue that is generated by the city of Los Angeles alone in one day is more than the GDP of Lesotho. So we are being told to open our markets. And when we opened our market, you saw what happened? Our textile industries died. The large textile industries that we knew about in Kaduna, in Nigeria, died. Our cotton industries died. Our sugarcane industries died. Our waters, even water nowadays, water. Dasani, Coca-Cola gives us water. You go to hotels in African countries, the water that we drink has the standardization, not this one. This is from UCC. But this is the exception rather than the rule. This is the exception. The rule is water. Dasani, sitting in Atlanta, Georgia, determining what water we take, we of the middle class. Making Africa work is my subject. What will it take? It will take our combined effort. But there must be an enlightenment of a totally different character. You know, when I think about Africa, and I think about her often, and I ask myself, Mother Africa, how will you be 100 years from today? And I remember the great Sudanese poet, Al-Faituri, writing about Africa. He says, oh, Mother Africa, how are you? Will you be great? You, Mother Africa, where your rebels have gained power and rebuilt, and they have destroyed what they rebuilt. Mother Africa, will you be great? You, Mother Africa, Faituri asks, you, the home of great rivers, will your sons ever fish in your rivers? Faituri asks, you, Mother Africa, whose belly is laden with all things known as natural resources, will you ever give meaning to them? Faituri asks, oh, Mother Africa, are you waiting for Godot? Mother Africa, I believe that Africa can be made great again. But remember, I said that Africa took the view that she could grow regionally. That is where I went on a tangent. Now I come back. So the East African community was there. South African development community was there. We had COMESA, we had IGAD, we have ECOWAS, we had Central African Organization, we had the Maghreb, we had the Sahelian. All these attempts have been made, and somehow Africa is still punching below her weight. Let us look at the different sectors so that we are better able to appreciate what Africa can be. And I believe that Africa can be great. I believe that Africa is capable of looking at our agriculture, because if a people cannot feed themselves, they cannot be at the dinner table of civilization. Today, Africa cannot feed herself. Here in Ghana, they love rice. They produce a little and import most. Here in Ghana, they love ketchup, but I suspect they import some. Here in Ghana, they love chicken. They produce some, but I suspect they import some. In Nigeria, I suspect they love meat, and I suspect they import some. They love rice. Here in Ghana, I know they produce cocoa and they love chocolate, but the chocolate they make, they don't like very much. They import chocolate from Switzerland. So until the day that we begin to like what we produce, so that we add value, I look forward to the day when the greatest chocolate making factories will be here in Ghana, and the next will be in Togo, and the next in Cote d'Ivoire. It can be done, which calls into question what our universities of agriculture doing. Are they involved? Are they included in the agenda of making Africa great? And I'm saying that history has demonstrated that when people decide to work in agriculture, they can actually do something about it. I remember so very vividly in your own Malawi, when President Mbingu wa Mutharika took power, he took the view that he could improve agriculture in Malawi. He took the view that he could produce enough maize. He took the view that Malawians could do it, and you will agree with me, they did it. It was done in Malawi. Why can it not be done now? I remember so very vividly, those of you who are from Burkina Faso, in 1983, when Thomas Sankara took power, he took the view that the Burkinabe could feed themselves, and within 5 years, Burkina Faso could feed herself. It can be done. I know that right now, I remember so very vividly in Zimbabwe when President Mugabe took power, and even before then, during the first 5 years, Mugabe's government was capable of producing enough maize to be consumed in Zimbabwe and enough cotton to make clothes. Today, as I speak to you now, the Zimbabweans are under threat of starvation. What happened? It can be done in Zimbabwe, and I believe that it must be done if Africa is to work. Africa can work in agriculture. Africa can work in innovation. I'm very glad that in the last 1 year in Makerere, Uganda, they have come up with a solar-powered bus. Ugandans can do it. I'm very glad that in Nigeria, only last week they unveiled a car that is made out of hydrocarbons. Nigerians can do it. I'm glad that in Morocco now they have the largest solar plant in the world. It can be done. I'm glad that in my own Kenya they now have one of the largest wind farms which generates power. It can be done. I'm glad that during the president of Akufo-Addo, Ghanaians have now abandoned one of the words they used to have in their vocabulary called dumso. I'm glad. In other words, if you look very keenly, there are things that can be done. And I'm suggesting to us that in order to do these things, we must ask ourselves how it can be achieved.
All right. So again, pay attention to this video as we're going to dive into the article. All right. So again, let me just make some addition to what he said, and then before we can go on to actually the first article. Now he mentioned something about Thomas Sankara, right? When Thomas Sankara came into power, and he said, Burkina Faso have to do everything on their own. We don't have to wait for France, the colonizer, the enslaver, the killer, the demon, the devil, to come and tell us what to do, because Thomas Sankara knew France does not have and will never have solution for Burkina Faso and for all the African nations that France colonized. All right, so Thomas Sankara knew those people, they will never have solution. So he went ahead to empower African, right? The Burkinabe, with the little resources they had, right? Okay, he spoke to the people, and the people trusted him, and he trusted the people, and they worked together, and they improved on a lot of things. Now, what happened? The same United States, the same UK, the same France, right? They went together and they make sure they assassinated Thomas Sankara. That is why the United States does not have solution for Africa. That is why the UK does not have solution for Africa, or EU does not have solution for Africa, because they kill African who have solution for African problems. They did not like African, and up to today, they do not still like African who have solution for African problem. So if you do not like African who have solution for African problem, then how can you come out, you yelling, Jenna yelling, or UN secretary or treasury secretary? How can you come out to say you have solution for African problem? Lena Thomas Greenfield, another Negro that they are using. Yesterday, she was the same person on the African continent when African leader questioned the United States about Russia and Ukraine incident. And they decided to stay neutral and not to support whosoever, but to support the African interest. It was the same Lena Thomas Greenfield that is sent on the African continent to go and threaten African leaders, to go and threaten the African people, that if you don't agree to the United States, this is what's going to happen to you people. But the African leaders and African people stood firm and said no. So then, how come they see Lena Thomas Greenfield is going on the African continent with an agenda saying she's going to work with African people? Yesterday, you threatened African people. Then how come today you coming out to say you have solution for African people? You're going to work with African people. How come today you are saying the United States involvement with Africa is not about telling African people what to do between Russia and China, what to do with any other nation? Yesterday you threatened us. We don't trust you. You don't have solution for African people. The United States does not have solution for African people. The United States partook in the killing, the assassination of Thomas Sankara. Okay, they took in the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. All of these people had great solution, great vision for Africa, and you killed them because it was a threat to your interest in Africa. How can you come out to say today you want to collaborate, you want to work with us? You see, America, we always have evidence against you. When we speak, we come with evidence, things that you have done against us. UK, EU, things that you have done against us. We always have evidence, and that is why we don't trust you. It's not like because we're speaking because we hate you. Africans don't hate. If Africans hate people, but now, no European, no Caucasian from the Caucasus Mountains will be on the African continent. You will never get a visa to go on the African continent for what you have done to African people. But no, we don't hate. Africans don't hate. We only remind you of what you have done. We only remind you that we don't trust you. We only remind you that you are not truthful. We only remind you. You came to us with globalization. Through globalization, you lied to us. You came to us with friendship to in fact, like Patrice Lumumba said, from the time European went to the African continent, we did globalization with you. What did you do? You enslaved us. What did you do? You colonized us. You have come with levies of investment, State, what happened? Nothing. You use Obama against us. You are not going to use Leonard Thomas Greenfield again against us. You use Obama and you kill Gaddafi. Gaddafi had a great solution. America, you have no solution for Africa. So when you sending Janet Yellen, when you send whosoever of delegate that you send to Africa, they do not have solution for Africa because you kill African leaders who have solution for the African people and for the African continent. Women abroad, you have no solution. If you have solution for Africa, you will have worked with Gaddafi, the recent one you just killed. If you have solution for Africa, you have worked with African nations. But no, you put in sanction on African nations. You put in sanction on African individuals that stand up against your ill policies to the African continent. You cut away from African nation who says they want to take their resources to benefit the African masses, to benefit African people. You cut away from them. You cut out from them. You cut funding from them. And you say you don't want them. Then you make other African nations to go against those African nations. You have no solution for African and the African continent and any African nation. We just reminding you, our eyes are open. Let's get to the first article. All right. So the first article we're going to look at here is from the Washington Times. The Washington Times. So it's the World Trade Organization, the so-called imperialist court organization, the so-called World Trade Organization. Okay, that's what we're going to look at first. So let's see here. Now, you know, it came a time when they hired this Nigerian lady, I forget her name. Anyway, her name will come. When they hire her, or this African, I don't want to specify Nigerian. When they hire this African lady, most Africans thought that Africa going to get the best out of the World Trade Organization. Folks, just because an African person is being elected or selected, not even elected, but selected to serve on an European organization, that does not mean that organization going to function in the interest of Africa. You have to look at the mission statement of that organization. You have to look at when that organization was funded. Who funded it? Just because you see an African serving on an European organization, that does not mean that person is there to serve the interests of Africa or African people. That person is there to be used. And that is why sometimes I do say, as a revolutionary, if we can use the white man too, just how they use African. But I know it's going to be tough to use the white man because the white men never betray. They never betray themselves. They never betray each other. The white man can look at his existing or her existing or her nation or her organization and allowed a black man to come and infiltrate it. A white man or a white person or a Caucasian or a European or Westerner will never ever go against their organization in the interest of African people or in the interest of a black person. A Western nation will never go, a Western citizen or European will never go against their country to serve the interest of a black man. Never. To serve the interest of a slave. Never. But only black people will serve the interests of Europe, of this imperialist nation, in order to suffer, in order for their people to die, in order for their people to remain at the bottom of society. Only a black person can do that. Let's continue here. The title says, World Trade Organization is worse than useless. I'm not the one saying it. So then what is the importance of the World Trade Organization? It's important to those who founded it after World War II, but it's not important to African people. So this is a black woman, this is an African woman serving on it, but this is 2023 report. World Trade Organization is worse than useless. Now, it's not useless to those that founded it, but it's useless to African. It's useless to African nations. It's useless. Let's continue here. The World Trade Organization is failing in its mission. Now, we have to ask ourselves, why is it failing in its mission? Because it is not doing anything good on the African continent. Why is it failing? Why? Is it failing because African nations are waking up? African peoples are waking up? The African continent is waking up? Is it failing because Africans are saying no? Is it failing because Africans have come to realize the illness or the ill behavior of this organization? Is it failing? Let's get into it. These are questions we're going to uncover. Now, established after World War II as the General Agreement of Tariff and Trade, along with the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, the United States and its ally. Now, at that time, Africa was never here. The United States and its ally created these institutions to promote trade among Western market. Now, to promote trade among Western market, you have to look at the mission statement. You have to look at why this organization or organization of such were funded. It was funded to help Western nations, not African nations, not African people, Western nation, European nation, white nation, not black nation. So now, is it failing? Because some nation that later joined the so-called WTO are breaking out the ill in WTO. Is it failing because later on, somewhere down the line that I check, other nations came and joined the so-called WTO. And now, those nations in the so-called WTO are empowering African nations. And African nations or the African continent is waking up. African nations are waking up and getting some momentum. And then telling the so-called WTO, now you got to back up. Is it because it's failing? Now that the so-called Western country economies are failing because they are not having the time to loot the African resources. The United States and its allies created these institutions to promote trade among Western market economies. The comfortability of currencies and investment in developing nations, not Africa. Now, listen to this. Let's continue here. Now, an underlying objective was to promote economic integration as a deterrence to war, and strengthening national security. All right, right after World War II. All right, to strengthen the so-called European nation, European market, along with the European Union and the other WTO stations, regional agreement. It helped expand trade based on comparative advantage and common prosperity. Based on comparative advantage and common perspective. Okay, based on their interests, based on European people's interests. Okay, not on African people's interests. Based on their interests, for them to remain unified group so that they will continue to exploit the African continent. Okay, right after World War II, they say, okay, we use a slave to build our country, to build our nations, right? We were together, and that's how we succeeded. And in order to succeed again, we have to stay united so that we will continue to explore the African continent. After the 1884 Berlin Conference, they share Africa among themselves. Then they went and fought, right? But they have to group themselves again. Now, in grouping themselves, what did they do? Russia was not among them when they did this WTO. When you follow history, you know why Russia was not among. Now, I am bringing Russia's name out because Russia and China are significant influence on the 21st century economic growth. Now, this 21st century economic growth in the world was initiated by China, not the US, not UK, or not a European nation. This 21st century economic boom all around the world was initiated by China. It is through China that this 21st century have experienced economic boom in the world. It is China that have improved technology in the world, not the US. If you see other nations today striving in a little effort, whether technology or whether becoming self-dependent, it is because of the influence of China, not the colonizer. And this is why the colonizers are angry. They are saying the WTO mission is failing. Let's continue here. Now, before I can even go, I'm not going to go too deep for the benefit of this platform. Folks, there's a reason why war is in Ukraine. And there's a reason why they are pampering Taiwan to go against China. It's to weaken these two nations. Because why? If not, if they do not create tension to other places that will make these nations to focus on fighting that war, these colonizers, these imperialists, these oppressors, they will have no say in Africa. Because first of all, African people have almost already turned their back from the US, from the UK. From the US, from the UK, these colonizers are not asleep. They are working diligently day and night for their own interests. So they have to create chaos somewhere down the line, somewhere in the world, somewhere in other nations, for Russia to focus on it. Because Russia has to focus on protecting herself, protecting her nation, protecting her territory. Then that will give little attention to the African continent or to any African nation. They have to create a situation that China will focus on to protect her interests. And China will not focus her full attention on the African continent. I'm not speaking for those nations. I am speaking for Africa here. But I want you to look between the lines and see the political game, the political maneuver going on here. Some of you Negro, when you coming out to say Russia is fighting Ukraine, Russia is doing bad, this, that, you must first understand what geopolitics is. Some of you Negro don't understand. Because you believe in the oppressor so much. You believe in the colonizer so much. You believe in the enslaver so much. You believe in those imperialists so much. Even if they are doing the wrong thing, you still believe they are doing the right thing. The war in Ukraine is purposely for Africa. It was done against you. And the situation rising up between China and Taiwan, it is purposely done against you, African, you so-called Negro. Let's continue here. Russia and China. Now, in this report, right, you will never hear any other nations, only Russia and China. Even in a so-called U.S. Secretary, General Yellen, traveled to Africa, you never heard any other nation, Russia and China, were mentioned. In a so-called upcoming Lena Thomas Greenfield travel to Africa, what she's going to say, there is no other nation, only Russia and China. So everything you say, African people, open your eyes. It's about Africa. The war you see going on is because of Africa. Because these people will not give up. They will do it to the end. If they will lose, they will lose. But they're going to do it to the end. These are people that have no remorse. They don't care whether you take your own stand or who you want to do who with or what you want to do what with. But they got some so-called African Negro, bourgeoisie and puppets. One typical example is the DRC Congo leader or the DRC leader. We might talk about him next Friday because I have some information about him. So everything that they are doing going on the African continent, they may come there and say one or two things to divert your mind or your attention, but it's all about weakening China and Africa so that the so-called America or UK will continue their exploitation on the African continent. They are angry because through these people, Africa have come to a level in this 21st century, a level of development, a level of sensibility, a level of self-independence, a level to the extent Africa can stand and say no to the US. You think they're happy? They are angry. A level to the extent African leader, some can tell the US to back off. You think they are happy? Don't get it twisted. Let's continue here. Russia and China were admitted into the WTO in 2001 and 2012. So I believe China was admitted in 2001 and Russia was admitted in 2012. So these nations literally came on later. But listen what they're going to say about this nation, how this nation came and infiltrated the World Trade Organization. Let's continue here. Respectively, these nations joined 2021 and 2012. Respectively, based on the flawed assumption that membership and rules for tariff, export and import, quota and domestic policies affect trade, such as product standard, intellectual property protection, and industrial policy. Now, first of all, let me make this here clear. In this context, these intellectual property protection and individual policies they are talking about here, these are things they made it known clear to Russia and China upon joining their so-called useless and worthless WTO. These are policies that they told them, international property protection. Look, the African continent is there. We got hold of the African continent. So when you come in here, you have to work with us. You have to make sure, do not go to places that we own in Africa, that we have protection over to do anything. You have to make sure, do not go against our policies in a so-called terror nation, in a so-called terror African nation. Do not go against our policy. Okay? Now they say, who foster their transition to the Western start. To the Western start. So they were telling these people, Your position have to be based on our Western star, on the Western star of market. Do not come in and change the Western star of market. But wait a minute. China went and did something. Russia went and did something. They did not go by the standard of the Western star. China is not going to be oppressed on a Western star. China need her own interest to boost her own economic in China. Russia need her own interest to boost her own economic in Russia. Okay? Who foster their transition to Western star market economies and domestic governance. Let's continue here. Now they said that simply hasn't happened. So now you see it. So all these things they told China and Russia, it never happened. All Russia wanted to do, get in there. All China wanted to do, get in there. To have a voice, to have a say in there. But everything they told them, it never happened. That did not happen. Okay? So let's continue here. So everything, America, UK, Australia, all of them is all about China, Russia, China, Russia. Okay? Because China and Russia have put sand in their food. Let's continue here. China has subverted the rules. Okay? China has subverted the rule. China changed the rule. China did not go by the rule. Okay? China has subverted the rule by forcing foreign investors to transfer intellectual property. Okay? Now, this intellectual property, China did not come to US and say, we got to force you to do what? To do this, to do that. This intellectual property, they are talking about African nations. These are people that don't respect Africa. That is why US does not have solution for Africa. UK does not have solution for Africa. So this intellectual property they're talking about here, they're talking about African resources. They're talking about African mine. They're talking about the diamond, the gold, the uranium, the timber, the ore. African resources. The investor they're talking about here, they're not talking about China came and changed America here, where American does not want to invest in America. That's not what they're talking about. The investor they're talking about the so-called colonial investor on the African continent. To the extent African leaders have not seen the difference. What investors are, who investors are, what kind of investment they're carrying. So now African leaders, some, not all, are not making deal with the so-called American investor, with the so-called European investor. And that is why they are going and sanctioning individual Africans in governments who they feel threat to. Africa, let me tell you this. America have no solution for you. What they are bringing to the tables are not solution, are solution for them, but are not solution for you. Because they are against your progress. For each time you try to make progress, they go against individuals who try to make those progress happen for Africa. They try to go against African nations who try to make progress for Africa. They have no solution for African people. When they are coming to the African continents, because, oh yes, the whole year is going to be about American diplomat, European diplomat going to the African continent. How long are we going to wake up? They came with globalization. It did not work. Up to this time, nothing. They came with investment. Nothing. They came with mutual partnership. Nothing. They benefited, but we did not benefit. They came with technology, how they call it, technology investment. Nothing. But who have the highest technology investment on the African continent? In the world is China. Any nation you go to, you ask them about their technology, they will tell you, say, it's from China. Any nation in the world you go to, you ask them about their improvement, they will tell you, say, from China. What a road, what a hospital, what a building, what a infrastructure, what a this, a vocational institution, they will say China. But wait a minute. China just went on the African continent recently. But wait a minute. The last time I checked, these so-called imperialists was on the African continent since the 1600s. That did not end. 1884, They went in the 1800s and destabilized, took over the entire African continent. And they did nothing, but they exploited us, they enslaved us, they dehumanized us, they castrated or they killed us. Oh yes, King Leopold is so-called did it in Belgium. Cut people's hands, toes. They dehumanized us. These people have no solution for Africa. If they are angry that China is opening African eyes, that means they have no solution. If they are angry that other nations are working along with Africa, at least for Africa to have a taste of our resources, at least for African people to be able to know what is being made for their resources from timber, from law, from iron ore, from uranium, from those textures, from rubber. If you are angry about that, then you have no solution for Africa. Let's continue here. So everything here in this WTO report is all about China and Russia. Because they see that China and Russia is a threat. China and Russia are a threat to their selfish and demonic interests on the African continent and in African nations. Let's continue here. China has subverted the rule by forcing foreign investors to transform intellectual property, massively subsidizing domestic industry, such as semi-microconductor, imposing great harm on Western economy. Did you see that? Imposing great harm on Western economy. I just told you. It is true, China. If you are saying manufacturer company in Africa today is because of China. So they are angry. It is affecting the so-called Western economy. It is affecting American economy. It is affecting Europe economy. It is affecting the imperialist economy. Because African gradually are now manufacturing mostly places, their resources on the African continent. So raw material, mostly were just leaving Africa and coming to Europe and America or the so-called area of the imperialists are not coming like that. Africans are holding onto their resources now and saying, no, we will grow. Our population will become educated. So we will keep our resources for this generation and the next generation to come. At some point, we will have factory here. Those plans is a threat to Western economics. And this is what they are talking about here. So it is a great harm on Western economics and effectively gaming the dispute settlement processes or process. Let's continue here. Consequently, since the Obama administration, another puppet, since the Obama administration, the United States has refused to approve new judges for the WTO appellate body. In the Trump years, the appellate review a dispute settlement panel discussion cease. So you see what is going on here. Now, let's continue here. The WTO recognizes the right of nations to take actions inconsistent. Now, you see here why this World Trade Organization was founded against Africa. And now you see here again why they are against China and Russia, because China and Russia came and changed the game. Listen to what they said here. All right. So the WTO could not even hold America if America is doing something illegally. WTO could not hold or cannot hold the so-called EU if EU is doing something legally. Listen to this. The WTO recognizes that the right of nations. Now, the right of nations, these nations, right? They're talking about right of nations. Africa is not there. All right. In a video we watch, what Patrick Lumumba said. How can, I'm just going to paraphrase, how can a small nation, for example, like Togo, compete with the United States? So this nation they're talking about here, Africa is not there. No African nation in this nation. Okay? Listen to this. The WTO recognizes the right of nations to take action. Can Togo take action against US? Can Ghana take action against US? Can Liberia take action against US? Absolutely not. So no African nation is here. Even Nigeria, they can't take action against US. Because why? We're going to get to it. Let's see here. The WTO recognizes the right of nations to take actions inconsistent with its rules. So that means they take actions, they don't go by WTO rule, okay? With its rules for the purposes of preserving public moral and safety and national security. Okay? So, and we have seen that. And they have the same mandate in the United Nations, where US can go to any nation and invade our country, and then the USA, they went in our country for special military operation. Because there's a clause in our US or in our United Nations that if the United Nations US embark on anything, any nation to invade a place, as long as they come out to say they went for special military operation, the United Nations will never hold the US responsible. So they're going to that country, they violate the rule of that country, they violate a UN rule, they violate the WTO rule, and then they say they go there for special military operation. And that's how the United States have been protected. To all the nations she have gone and invaded in the war. Over 80 countries have been invaded, wrongfully invaded. And those countries today, they are suffering to gain economic power. Their people are dying in poverty because the United States went there for special military operation. So only they can go for special military operation, but no one else can do it. So that is why Petro Lumumba said, how can a nation like Togo, who is, imagine, the United States military budget, let's say last year, the end of last year, like she put into place, 1.7 trillion budget, okay? And then out of that, 858 billion into defense budget, just last year, around December, after they met with Zelensky. In less than no time, 1.7 trillion United States dollar was signed for government spending. You know how many years it's going to take a small nation like Togo to sign into budget 1.7 trillion? You know how many years it's going to take? Can you compete with the US? Can you compete with the US when the US is having $558 billion into just military budget, defense budget? What is the budget of the Togolese National Army? What is the budget of Liberia National Army? What is the budget of Ghana National Army? What is the budget of Nigeria National Army? Senegal National Army? Mali National Army? And then let's go on. What is their budget? So that is why they are angry, because they want for African nations to remain where they are. But through China, Africa is rising up. And Africans are working to unite. Even though it's tough, it's difficult, and there's nothing difficult about it, but you just have some of those greedy African and selfish leaders who think when they unite, then they will not get money. Or who think when they unite, then they will not get money into European banks, into American banks, the Barclays Bank, the slave bank, the Wachovia Bank, slave bank, Bank of America, slave bank. They will not get money there. They think when they unite, the African people will monitor their money in African banks on the African continent. But that is why sometimes when they die, their money stay in American banks, in European banks, and they take it. And the colonizer will take it and then put it into their institution and give scholarship to their children and say, oh, this money is coming from social places, that's scholarship. When they put sanction on your country, or they put sanction on you, they seize your assets in America and in Europe, then they take your money and then put it into their economy, put it into their school system, put it into their vocational system for their kids, for their children. And that is why their lives are improving. Their technology are improving. And you think they have so good IQ than African people, because African leaders are not wise, they are not thinking. Some. Let's continue here. Now, when Russia seized Greenfield in 2014, it blocked trade between Ukraine and Kazakhstan and Kazakhstan. Now, in 2018, the Trump administration imposed 25% of tariff on steel and 10% tariff on several nations. Now, you see what happened here? That is why no African nation can compete with these people. Because when things become difficult for them, they make things difficult for you. Okay? You remove tariff or import, how they call it, export detail, as they export their stuff and thing. You say, okay, then America come here and do business. We get them free detail export. Free detail, we give it to them. But they will never do it to you. Let's continue here. In 2019, a panel accepted that national security action were subject to WTO review. Still, Russia may block Ukrainian trade because conditions between the two nations rose to the level of war or other emergency in international relations. In December, another panel ruled that U.S. tariff are not justified because they were not taken in time for war. It is tough to supply any army without metal. It is tough to supply any army without metal. Still, people of goodwill and with knowledge of economics and trade law can disagree about whether imposing tariff on Canada and other close allies was prudent. So you see it. You can't put tariff on these people. You can't tax these people. They will tax you and exploit you. More importantly, if the WTO can sanction a war-torn act of aggression by an autocratic state and prohibit the United States from maintaining an industrial base to supply its military when not engaged in a hot war, the WTO become worse than useless. So you see, America can go anywhere, okay, support rebel like how they did it in Ethiopia, supported the TPLF. The WTO did nothing. UN did nothing. That is why they are useless and worthless. Let's see here. So let's see. There is something I want to read here, okay? I don't know if it is in this article. I know it's here. I don't want to read the whole thing, but there is something I want to read here, where the United States is calling China imperialist. I think it's this article. It was kind of funny though. The United States is calling China an imperialist. I was laughing. How can an imperialist call another nation an imperialist and says, oh God, I really wanted to read it. I don't know if it is this. Let me see here. All right, it's this article. I know I saw it at the end. All right, let me read something here. So I don't know. It's here. I really wanted to read it because they were saying that nations should look at China imperialist rules and also versus Western imperialist governance. And I saw it, I was like, what? I really want to get that out, but I can't get to it, and I don't want to waste our time here because we're running out of time. All right. I'm just going to read it. If I don't see it, I say, but it's somewhere in there. So here it said, China make no secret of its intention to build a military with global clock. The challenge the security interests of U.S. allies in the Pacific and gain control of Taiwan. Okay, so again, that's another area. Okay, the U.S. is going against China. Okay, now everything we're talking about here is all about interest. That's one area, and another area is Africa. Okay, now it's admixture of autocracy. Okay. I think this is it right here. Okay, this is what I want to read. It's admixture of autocracy and state direct capitalists. State direct capitalists to the developing world. Now, that developing world, obviously, they come to mind, they're talking about Africa, right? To the developing world as an alternative to democratic capitalism. So now, America have come out with the terms. So this is a capitalist nation describing another nation as a directed capitalist, state directed capitalist. So no matter how America want to put it, state directed capitalist versus democratic capitalism. So for the level of what we have seen in Africa, that is not to say we're speaking for China because China have our own interests. But if we are comparing them in comparison, for the longest time, you, America, as a capitalist, has spent on the African continent. There is nothing we can show as what China have done and we can show. For the level of time you have spent on the African continent, if China is to spend that level of time on the African continent, I believe Africa will come to a point where we will even tell China we don't need you again. Thank you. I believe it will come to a point Africa will even tell China, thank you. We have come to a point now. I think we can go from here now. Thank you. So can you tell us the difference between direct capitalism versus democratic capitalism? Because democratic capitalism, as you have defined yourself to be, it is democratic capitalism that killed Gaddafi. It is democratic capitalism that today Libya is a ghost town. It is democratic capitalism that today even Zimbabwe has sanctions. That is why you have no solution for Africa. Because once upon a time, as Petro Lumumba, said in his video speech, Zimbabwe was feeding herself, and even the African continent, where Zimbabwe was making wheat under Robert Mugabe. But you sanction this man, and that's how they feel. That is democratic capitalism as you have defined yourself to be. It is under democratic capitalism that even today, in DRC Congo, no peace to the extent that the United States is a supporter of the M23 rebels. That is democratic capitalism. It is democratic capitalism where today Burkina Faso, you cut away from Burkina Faso because Burkina Faso have decided to take all mines from foreigners. And you say you want to have nothing to do with Burkina Faso. That is democratic capitalism you define yourself to be. It is democratic capitalism who will only go to African nation to tell other African nation who want to be puppet to tell them to cut off from Burkina Faso because Burkina Faso is taking a stand. That is democratic capitalism. It is democratic capitalism when Burkina Faso or Mali have come to the UN and told the United Nations that France is invading her airspace and France is invading her airspace supporting terrorists. And you said nothing, but rather you went as an entity that controls UN to even put crime on Mali. That is democratic capitalism. Now, what is direct capitalism? Direct capitalism, as you have defined China to be, is empowering other nations to become self-sufficient. It's not putting sanctions on other nations just because your policy was never supported in our country. That is directed capitalism as you are defined China to be. Directed capitalism, as you are defined China to be, is a capitalist system where China does not oppress other people. China carry her agenda. Now allow those leaders to look at it and say yes. So if China bring her policy and African leaders do not read it well or do not comprehend it and just go and sign it, then what should you expect? Because that is what China have in her policy. China do not put sanction on African nation or African individual who say no to China. As it is opposite to you. That is directed capitalism as you are defined China to be. China is not the one carrying ammunition, supporting proxy war like you did it in Ethiopia. That is directed capitalism as you are defined China to be. China is not the one undermining African leaders. China is not the one undermining African elections. That is directed capitalism as you are defined China to be. So you see the difference between directed capitalism and democratic capitalism. Directed capitalism is where China relax. China say, okay, go ahead and do your thing. Directed capitalism is where China bring her agenda and allow the so-called African people to bring their agenda. If you sit down there and you take it, what China bring, then it'll take your output, then that's it. But unlike democratic capitalism, they have no remorse. They force you to do things. If you say no, they threaten you. If you say no, they sanction you. If you say no, they cut off from you. If you say no, they go against, they make all African nations to go against you. That's the difference between directed capitalism as you define China to be and democratic capitalism as you define yourself to be. So you see the difference now. Let's continue here. That is what I wanted to bring. So that's the difference there. So I wanted to bring this out for people to see it. So that's the difference between directed capitalism and democratic capitalism. So a level African people to take which one they want to take. We can define it. You think you have to define it for us? We can define it based on our experiences with you and with China and with UK. That is why US does not have any solution for Africa. That is why UK does not have any solution for Africa. They're going to be proliferating on the African continent with their so-called delegates. It is not African interest. They did it. They came in 1600. And we open up to them. That was globalization there. We show them our culture, our life, everything, because we fear they are human just how we are human. But they went against us. Then they came by the 1800 with their Bibles. They told us, let us pray, like Jomo Kenyatta said. When we close our eyes to pray, that is globalization right there. When we close our eyes to pray, Their eye was open, dividing the land. Their eye was open, killing our people. Their eyes were open, raping our people. Their eyes were open, stealing our resources while we were praying. While we were praying, they gave us the Bible. They said, keep reading the Bible. But they were not reading the Bible, though. They gave us the Bible, and they told us to keep praying and keep reading the Bible. And as we were keep reading the Bible, what they were telling us was our form of African spirituality was wrong. We should leave it. It will never take us to the so-called heaven. While we were reading the Bible and preaching to our people, they were telling us our gods that we serve, we should leave it. It was never take us to heaven. While we were reading the Bible, and it was telling us that only the poor can go to heaven. The rich will not go. So we mark on these things and we say we want to be poor because we don't want to be rich. Because if you're rich, you will not go heaven. But the men are told only the rich shall go to heaven or shall inherit heaven. Why he was fighting to be rich? Up to today, when it comes to going to heaven, African men believe they must die poor because they got to go to that heaven. They don't understand that heaven is right on earth. They don't understand that hell is right on earth. They think there is a heaven up there where the Creator is sitting. Then the Creator will come and carry them and go and sit down there. And then they sit along with the Creator in the same area. It's not going to happen. If it was going to happen, when the Creator created the world, the Creator was going to be here along with you. So there is no heaven anywhere that you're going to go sit down there with the Creator. The white man is in their heaven right now because they control you. They do everything. So they are in their heaven. They created heaven for themselves by giving you the Bible and telling you just keep praying, keep reading, don't open your eyes, keep being ignorant. Don't open your eyes. And African people are still praying. Their eyes are not yet open. African people are still reading the Bible. They have not yet stopped reading the Bible. But the people that brought it, they don't read the Bible. In fact, the people that brought the Bible to us, they don't even understand the Bible. But don't get it twisted. That same Bible, it is black people's story. But they just manipulated it. Because so long we believe they wrote it. No. You can't read my story when it was written by me. How can you read my story when my story was written by me? So they themselves don't understand the Bible. It was never even called Bible. It was never called Bible. But let me get back to my point. So that is why these people, they don't have solution for us, because always their solution will put us in a predicament. Let's continue here. So now you have seen the World Trade Center, right? Let's see the lady, the African, they appointed, and let's see what she says here about this so-called World Trade Center. So it's a 1-minute video, okay? So let's see it here. Sorry, folks. Now, I want you to pay attention to the body language of the colonizer, the imperial, the oppressor sitting in there. Pay attention, okay, to those so-called WTO folks sitting in there. Pay attention to their body language. That will tell you that they're not even listening. They don't even infer. It's like, what are we doing here? Why is this? Why is she talking about? Pay attention to the body language. They have no interest in what she's saying. So, did you see the body language of those white folks sitting in there, right? That alone is to tell us these people don't care. They don't care globalization. They don't care nothing. Partnership. They don't care nothing. As long they are not in position, as long they are not in charge, they do not care. They don't want for African to be in charge. They don't want to work with African, but they want for African to work with them. How can you come in my country, in my house, and you want me to work with you, but don't work with me? How can you come in my country to control me, to tell me what you want to do? How you going to come in my continent, on my continent, to rule me, to run things, to tell me how things should be done in my continent? When we come to your Europe, when we come to your America, or to your England, or to your Australia, do we run things? You run things. You tell how things should be done, and we do it, and we go by it. You give your rules. We go by your rules. So how dare you come on the African continent and you want to come make rules, set of rules? See their body language in there. That alone was telling that lady, shut up, you Negro. We put you in this position for a mission. They were telling us, shut up. We put you in a position to be a puppet, not to come and tell us what to do. Shut up. We put you here to dictate to you. Shut up. We put you here to go and do our mission. Shut up. Look at their body language. They didn't even care to listen to us. They were just sitting there because it would have looked so embarrassing if any of them would have just walked out. So they sat down there, made their faces that they don't care. Look at what I was doing down there. They were telling her, you woman, you are a Negro. You are a slave. Shut up. We put you here for a mission. You think we put you here to pay you to come and tell what to do? Do you think we put you here for Africa to have an equal partnership with us? Do you think we put you here for Africa to come and sit on a table to discuss things with us? And look, folks, with their body language in there, all of their delegates going on the African continent, they are going with that same attitude. Don't listen. Don't think they are coming to tell you, you heard what the lady said. Okay? These developed nations, they're going to talk everything, what is good for them. And then in Africa, nations that are coming out, that are developing, and then they will say it is possible that this nation, it is possible, it is potential. Now, when they say potential, that doesn't mean development going to go there, or that doesn't mean they have interest, or that doesn't mean what they are telling you they're going to do it. It is possible. That doesn't mean it's going to be possible. It is a potential. That doesn't mean it's going to be potential. That's how we have to understand. If a man cannot sit on the table to discuss with you, to listen to your view, but rather have no regard for what you are saying or have no interest of what you are saying, that person will not bring solution to the table. And that is why US does not have solution for the African people. UK does not have solution for the African people. Only African people have solution. Let's go to the next one. Let's go to Yellen, the so-called US Treasury Secretary. Let's see here. Now, the next thing we're going to look at here is, this is where I want to really address something. So we're going to be in Africa at the same time we come back to the US. Now, we're going to use Dr. King's speech a little bit in this area, the first speech or the first video we watch, okay, about Dr. King. We're going to use it here, okay? Now, yelling at former slave port in Senegal. So there's a slave port in Senegal, just how they have Ghana, okay? So the Dodgen, okay? At a former slave port, sees path of renewal of Africa and US. Now, she's at this place, right? In Africa, at this place where they used to carry the slave, dehumanize them, rape them, torture them. They want to die, and then they threw them overboard on the sea. Where they never had time, they spit on them, they pee on them, they poop on them. Never took shower. She went to this place. This imperialist went to this place, and then she said she was touched. And being touched, she see path to strengthening US-Africa relation. No. Just because you went on the African continent and you went to this place, that does not mean it is a path to strengthen US-Africa relation. That was just a building that you saw. But the people that was humiliated, the people that were tortured, that were killed, that were raped, that were butchered, they live right here in America. So it's just a building. How can you just see a building? But the people to whom that were housed in that building, they're here. And you have no remorse for them. And then you went and just saw a building. And you think that building can strengthen Africa and US relation? No. The people that are here, strengthen our relationship with them first. The people that were raped, the people that were castrated, the people that were that was beaten, that was lynched, that were hanged, that were chained, that was spit on, that was spit on, they live right here. They live right here. So you see how fake these people are. Very fake. Now, you went to this port, all right? You saw maybe artifact, you saw different things, right? But are you telling me you have now been to Washington, D.C. to see the slave museum? Have you never been to Washington, D.C. to see the slave museum, to cry, to shed tears, and say, you know what? By me visiting this slave museum in Washington, D.C., it is a path to reparation for the descendant of the enslaved? Have you gone there to see and then say, you know what? My visit here, it is a path to reconcile with the enslaved African, with their descendant in America? Have you been there? And if you have been there, why was it a path? Why you didn't see it as a path. Yelling, you are a hypocrite. You are not a solution to the African problem. You are not a solution. Your visit is not a solution. Your visit had a hidden motive, hidden agenda. You left the people here, the people that didn't happen to, the people that you took into captivity. You left them here and you went and saw a building, just a building. The people that you took into captivities, they are here. And they have museum for it here. And they have statues for them in our museum. Don't lie to us. Your visit, it means nothing. You are a hypocrite. You are a deceiving person. It means nothing. What have you done for the Negro in this country? You still see them as Negro. You still see them as 3/5 of a lesser human being. 25% of the world population, of the world prisoners are in America here. 25% of the war prisoners. Now, when I say war, I don't mean like war criminal or war. No, 25% of people in prison are from the United States. And out of that 25% in prison in the United States, 80 to 85% are the people you call minority. 80 to 85% in prison are the people you call minority. Then how dare you go on the African continent, want to ally you that, oh, human being, oh my God, this, that. That's how y'all do it, to lie to us. That's not friendship. You are a hypocrite. 25% of the world prisoners are in the U.S. here. Out of that 25%, 80 to 85% are the people you call minority, are the people you enslave, are the people you kept in captivity. You don't reconcile with them. How you left them here, went on the African continent for your own selfish interests, for our resources, for African leaders to think that, oh yeah, the white men have come, the white people have come. No. You liar. You liar. Go to the slave museum in Washington, D.C. and start from there. Start the peace process from here. Don't go on the African continent. That's just a building. What you saw in Africa, in Senegal, is just a building. But the people to whom their blood, their sweat, they are here. Start from here. I'm not even going to read the whole thing, but I just brought that out to let her know. The people to whom their blood, their sweat, the people to whom they were buried on sea, you raped and charged on a lynch and castrated and chained them for 400 plus years, they are here. That was just a building. Don't lie to us. You liar. Let's continue here. And go to the next one. Now she left. She went in South Africa. Okay? She left and went in South Africa. Listen what she said here. In South Africa too. I'm just going to brush over them. I'm not even going to read them. But I'm going to brush over them and make references to it. Okay? She went to South Africa. This is what she said in South Africa. So these people, they are fighting so high to gain the interest of African people. Because look, the African nations are drifting away from the US, are drifting away from the UK. It is because of their past history. It is because of their continual history. It is because of their present story. Past history and present story. Nothing changed. The past is still the present, nothing changed. So Africans have come to realize it. So they are losing it. Because very soon they don't want to become terror. America don't want to become terror. And that is what you fail to educate her people. That is why UK have failed to educate their people. You see what is going on. Things are becoming expensive. And if we Africans realize these things and wake up and take initiative in our own hands and start growing our own foods and stuff, things will be expensive in the US, things will be cheaper in Africa. Things will be expensive in UK, things will be cheaper in Africa. It is time. So listen what she said here. She went in Africa, right? To go sympathize with animals in South Africa, but does not sympathize with human beings. Does not sympathize with the people they kept in captivities here. No, but she goes sympathize with animals just to draw the attention of Africans. That is not partnership. That is not globalization. It's all BS. The U.S. South Africa Joint Initiative Combat Wildlife Trafficking. So she went in South Africa. You know, they visited these places, right? They have nothing to say, but they have to come out to say something to convince African people to be on their side. But it is not going to work. We're not going to listen to this. Africa is going to make business with who they want to make business with as long as in the interest of African people. All I can say is our African leaders should be mindful. Not just because you want to make business and you should just run to go into business without understanding the business model, without understanding the long-term effects or the short-term effects or the long-term benefit or the short-term benefits. That's all we ask African leaders to be mindful of. We ask African leaders to serve in the interest of Africa and African people. And we will protect them. We will support them as long as they are ruling the right way for Africa and African people. The U.S. Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, used store on the Duncan Game Reserve in South Africa on Wednesday to announce a joint initiative to combat wildlife trafficking and related criminal activities in the United States and South Africa. So that's how they do it, okay? To get your attention. But do you know in America here, our black women are being trafficked every day and the security do nothing about it. Our black women are being vanished. They disappear. But they do nothing about it. We protest upon protest, nothing. First, we will increase information sharing between our financial intelligence unit to better support key law enforcement agencies from South Africa and United States. Second, the task force will prioritize the sharing of financial red flag and indicator related to wildlife trafficking cases. First of all, there should be a bullshit. I'm not even going to say BS. I'm going to use the word bullshit. Sorry, Facebook, for the side that we are sharing on Facebook. You have proxy war all on the African continent. You went in Africa, you did not talk about stopping those wars. You go talk about wildlife. That is not to say these animals do not have right to live. But first of all, who go in Africa to do trophy hunting? They say so-called European. They say so-called Westerner. They're going in Africa to do trophy huntings. You went on the African continent, you will speak about the issue in DRC Congo because you know who support the M23 rebels and various groups. You went in Africa, you did not talk about the situation in Mali because you know you'll be going against France, and all of you work together. You went in Africa, you did not talk about the issue in Burkina Faso, in Chad, in Niger, Nigeria, Southern Sudan. You did not talk about it. She went in Africa and talk about all something crap. BS. That is not to say those animals, they don't have the right to live. But you know what she's simply trying to tell us? We are 3/5 of a lesser human being. We are inferior. So they value animals' life over Africans' life. That is why America have no solution for Africa. That is why Europe have no solution for Africa. Africa, your solution lies with you. It is better you start uniting the African continent. It is better you all come together and have one united front army of Africa. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Let's get to the next place. So let's get to Leonard Thomas Greenfield. We finish with yelling. Let's get to Leonard Thomas Greenfield. So, the United States mission to the United Nations. The United States mission to the United Nations. Now, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Leonard Thomas Greenfield, to travel to Ghana, Mozambique, and Kenya. Now you see, right? Over the years, we're going to see these so-called U.S. diplomats going on the African continent. So they have divided all places. Yelling went to Zambia. She went to Senegal. And she stopped to South Africa, and then she'll be coming back. Okay? And then as she's coming, there's so-called Negro that Michael Garvey warned us about, Leonard Thomas Greenfield, will be traveling to Ghana, to Mozambique, and to Kenya. And then as she come back, another so-called diplomat will be going. Now, the article is kind of short. I'm just going to read some part and then we move on. But they say Leonard Thomas Greenfield, years back, she was in Africa threatening African nations, threatening African leaders, that if they become neutral, this is what's going to happen to them. If they don't come on the side of the U.S., this is what's going to happen to them. And that's how African leaders came out and they spoke. And they said the United States have no moral right. UN have no moral rights. United Nations have no moral rights. And Thomas Leonard Greenfield have no moral rights to tell African whose side to be on. That is a colonial mentality. And those were the words that was said. That was a colonial mentality. And now she's going back again. So we don't trust her. Leonard Thomas Greenfield, Michael Garvey warned us that there are some African in America, they are not good to the African nation. There are some African, there are some Negro. So it is not up to him to carry all Negro on the African continent. Because some are not good here and some are not good there. And Leonard Thomas Greenfield is one of them that Michael Garvey talked about, that she's not good and she will not be good there. Leonard Thomas Greenfield will do these things to impress her colonial master so that when she dies, she can get state burial. So she can get the flag over her casket. So she can get some band being blown on the suffering of people. Leonard Thomas Greenfield. So that when she died, she can get a will for her great-grandchildren or her children to have will in the bank, in their account. She don't care. As long as she remains slave, she don't care. Now, in here again, they mention about China again. So in all of their movement they're doing in Africa, it's all about China and Russia. Folks, you have to open your eye. Ambassador Lena Thomas Greenfield, U.S. representative to the United Nations, will travel to Ghana, Mozambique, and Kenya January 25th to the 29th. And then when she comes back, another so-called representative will go to affirm and strengthen our partnership with Kenya, current and former UN Secretary Council member, following on the U.S. Africa Leader Summit. There is nothing to strengthen. There is nothing to affirm. Because we don't trust you. Because we are telling you, leave. You have done nothing to us. You dehumanize us and you justify it as right. You judge or you justify it as right. You create proxy war and we die. You justify it as right. You exploit our resources and you justify it as right. You call us inferiors. You justify it as right. You call us third world country. You justify it as right. Do you think we want to continue to be called third world country? Do you think we want to continue to be called a sovereign continent, poor continent? Do you think we want to continue to be the continent that is the most beggars continent in the world? How can the richest continent in the world become the number one beggar in the world? Do you think we want to continue that? Because by we strengthening that relationship or that partnership, you telling us to remain beggar, to remain poor, to remain in poverty, to be impoverished, to remain submissive. Oh yes. Democratic imperialist versus direct democratic. Like you said, Ambassador Thomas Greenfield will visit and advance shared priority, including addressing regional security, reinforcing commitment to democracy and human rights. What? You know what? I don't even want to read this thing. I'll stop here. But what is the kind of human right America has promoted on the African continent? Chaos, supporting rebels. You have Afrikan on the African continent. What have they done for us? To the extent that we don't want it. So when you come out to say you want to reaffirm or reinforce Afrikan on the African continent, when you are there, Africans are dying on the money African governments, on the money African leadership, on the money African democracy. If you have Afrikan in Africa, then we should have African military in America too. But I mean, that's the benefit. So it is interest. So you have your military in Africa, then now we have African military in America too. You see it? So these are the nonsense Lena Thomas Greenfield is going for there. Okay? These are the nonsense Lena Thomas Greenfield is going for there. To go strengthen what? What are you going to strengthen? What you have in Africa, you're going to strengthen. There is nothing there. You're going to strengthen. Because as far as we are concerned, you are angry for the level of development Africa have undertaken since the involvement of other partners. You are angry. So there is nothing to renew. There is nothing to reaffirm. Because through your partnership, starvation on the African continent, death on the African continent, war on the African continent, destabilization on the African continent. But through the partnership of other people, we have seen the kind of level of development going on. Even though we may not agree to the policy of China, where you have Chinese workers, even though we may not agree. But let's be realistic here. Let us be realistic here. Whose side should we take? If we are to take, let's be realistic. If we are to take the US, China, whose side will we take? Looking at their influence on the African continent, whose side will we take? Let's just be realistic here. If we are to look between China and the US for what they have done on the African continent, whose side will we take? Who will we go to? That's the bottom line about it. So that is why the US have no solution for Africa. UK have no solution for Africa. And that is why Michael Garvey warned us seriously about people like Lena Thomas Greenfield. If we did not learn from Obama, we should learn from this lady. And when they say Obama that went and killed Gaddafi, and later he said he regretted it was one of the biggest mistakes he ever did. But we don't even care if Obama regret it, because he did it. We should be mindful. Lena Thomas Greenfield was the same person that threatened African leader yesterday. So you African leader sat there because she's coming. She was the same person that came on the African continent because she felt she worked with UN, so she can go and say nonsense and threaten African people. She is the same person coming again. She was there yesterday threatening you, and then she's coming again. She's coming now. Oh, we want to work with African. She was. If someone threatened you yesterday, and you stood firm, and you gave the education, and told her that is a colonial policy, and then she came to herself, and then she's coming back in the next day, it just means she has changed tactics. The attitude did not change. The agenda did not change. Maybe the attitude may just change, but that agenda never changed. So she may come with different attitude. She may come with different smile on her face. She may come with different statement, but the agenda is what remains. So Michael Garvey said we should be mindful and careful of Lena Thomas Greenfield. She is the devil. Ladies and gentlemen, that is today's presentation. Thank you for being on. We just want to let African people, African leaders, aware that these so-called West, they have no solution for Africa. They will never have solution for Africa. If they have solution for Africa, they will have worked with Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, Jomo Kenyatta, Amilcar Cabral, Petro Lumumba, but they kill all those people. Those people have no bad idea. Those people have great solution, great ideas for Africa. If America has solution, if you have solution for Africa, they would have worked with those people. If America or Europe has solution for Africa, they will work alongside with China. They will not be angry with China. In fact, they would have come to African people, or they would have gone to China and tell China, bravo, great job. But you know what? I think we got to improve on what you did. We got to come out with different methods to actually improve on the African continent. But they are not going to do it. In reality, they are angry. They are rather angry. And they even told China, you changed the policy of the WTO. They told Russia, you changed the policy of the WTO. You are now working along with the Western Star. And that Western Star is demonization. That Western Star is scarier. That Western Star is sanction, proxy war. That Western Star is modern slavery. That Western Star is modern colonization. That Western Star is captivity. Like Western style is make the slave to think that we are sitting on the same table, but they are not on the table, discussing something that we were listening to. Like what happened in the video of the World Trade Center or the World Trade Organization with that lady, with that African. She's sitting there in her mind, she's sitting on the table. In her mind, she's bringing a solution as to why these people should follow. But you saw their body language. So by you sitting on a table with your colonial master or with your oppressor, that doesn't mean you are up for solution or they are up for good. So with China, Africans themselves are sitting on the table. And if Africans say no, the Chinese go back and they come back again. They don't come with sanction. That is why U.S. does not want, because U.S. see African as inferior. Why would they want to be backing their inferior? Why would they want to be linear with their inferior? They are superior. They cannot beg their inferior. That is why U.S. have no solution for Africa. UK have no solution for Africa and for any African nation, whether on the African continent or not. They're doomed. Haiti is an example also of the African continent. Ladies and gentlemen, revolutionary partner, greetings, fellows, brothers, family. Thank you for being on here. We stop here today. Share the live, subscribe, ask others to subscribe. We want to make sure before this year end to reach, or even before the middle of this year, to reach to certain subscriber. We can do it. Let us build this platform. Let us build this organization. Let us continue to carry on the message. Let us continue to expose and to find solution to the African problem. What we are discussing today, it was caused by the US and Europe, the European Union. What we are discussing, it was caused by them. So how can they be part of the solution? Things that was caused by them. If they have not enslaved African people, we were not going to be sitting here discussing this. If they have not colonized the African continent, we were not going to be sitting here discussing this. If they have not created a proxy war on the African continent and in African nation, both home and abroad, we won't be sitting here discussing this. And they were not carrying African leaders who were visionary, who have vision for Africa, we wouldn't have been sitting here discussing this. That is why they have no solution to Africa. Recent one, Gaddafi has solution, but they killed that solution. They killed that dream. Then how can we go to them? How can they come to us telling us about solution? How can they tell us which way to go and which way not to go? I see you all Friday. Thank you.